Hello everyone, welcome to Diplomatic Briefing. Japanese Prime Minister Sanae Takaichi has told Japanese media that Japan's intention to develop a strategic and mutually beneficial relationship with China has not changed, and he seems to be adopting a more moderate stance. However, at the same time, he has not withdrawn his previous remarks in Parliament regarding a nationwide emergency. His latest statement is that the Japanese government's position has always been consistent. What constitutes a nationwide emergency depends on the specific circumstances of each actual incident. The government will make a comprehensive judgment based on all available information. On November 21st, Chinese Foreign Ministry spokesperson Mao Ling responded at a regular press conference, saying that if Japan truly wants to develop a strategic and mutually beneficial relationship with China and build a constructive and stable China-Japan relationship that meets the requirements of the new era, it should adhere to the spirit of the four political documents between China and Japan and the political commitments it has made, and immediately retract its erroneous statements. They must genuinely reflect their commitments to China through concrete actions. From Mao Ling's response, it is clear that the Chinese side does not accept the statements made by Sanae Takaichi. Japanese media commentary has also mistakenly believed that Sanae Takaichi's remarks could break the current deadlock in the tense China-Japan relationship. Former Global Times editor-in-chief Hu Xijun believes that while Sanae Takaichi is adopting a new dialogue approach and maintaining a superficially moderate tone, her refusal to retract her previous statements is a deliberate strategy. The intention is to create the impression in Japanese public opinion that she has done nothing wrong and that she has already shown a conciliatory attitude toward China, thereby reducing the false impression that China is coercing her or Japan. Japanese society has become even more doubtful and dissatisfied with her for severely damaging China-Japan relations as soon as she took office. He believes that this contest between China and Japan is destined not to be short-lived. China needs to fundamentally change Japan's perception and feelings about China's overall national strength through this struggle with Japan, and also make them develop self-awareness and properly position themselves. They must come to a deep understanding of the extent to which Taiwan is a core interest of China until they realize that the Taiwan issue is something they cannot afford to provoke or touch. In the past, some in Japanese political circles believed that no matter how bad China-Japan political relations got, business would go on as usual. This is the so-called cold politics, hot economics theory. According to a special report by Global Times quoting mainland experts and scholars, the possibility of cold politics, hot economics between China and Japan no longer exists. The report analyzes which Japanese industries would face the greatest impact if China-Japan relations continue to deteriorate, and how much real financial loss Japan could suffer. The article points out that if China-Japan political relations deteriorate, the tourism industry would suffer due to a decrease in Chinese tourists, with estimated annual losses reaching 2.2 trillion yen, which is about 100 billion RMB. If seafood exports continue to be suspended, the combined losses from exports to the mainland and Hong Kong could exceed 110 billion yen, roughly 5 billion RMB. In manufacturing sectors such as semiconductors and home appliances, if their orders and investments in China are hit, coupled with capital market fluctuations and macroeconomic factors, the losses caused by downside risks could reach trillions of yen. Even more serious is that Japan's automotive industry in China is likely to face even tougher circumstances, and some brands may even accelerate their exit from the Chinese market. Overall, looking at Sanae Takaichi's remarks, they could result in Japan losing several trillion yen in real money, putting significant downward pressure on the Japanese economy. After the Chinese side issued travel and study warnings, Bloomberg reported on November 21st, citing data from Chinese marketing technology company Huahai Marketing, that since China advised its citizens on November 14th to avoid traveling to Japan, about 30% of the 1.44 million trips originally planned from China to Japan before the end of December have already been cancelled. Huahai Marketing's CEO Buhate pointed out that this will impact Japan's consumption. The reduction in spending will be at least $500 million, but this figure could rise to $1.2 billion. His calculation is based on the estimate that Chinese tourists spend over $900 million each month, as well as data from UnionPay and other financial service companies regarding Chinese overseas spending. According to data from the World Travel and Tourism Council, the tourism industry accounts for about 7% of Japan's total GDP, and in recent years it has become an important driver of economic growth. In the days following the issuance of the travel warning, Japanese tourism-related stocks continued to decline. According to Kyodo News, in 2024, the total spending by inbound travelers to Japan was about 8.1 trillion yen, of which Chinese tourists spent approximately 1.73 trillion yen in Japan, accounting for about 21.3% of the total spending by inbound travelers to Japan. This makes them the largest spending group among all single countries. In other words, for every 5 yen spent by inbound tourists, 1 comes from Chinese visitors. Of those 5 yen, 1 comes from Chinese tourists. As for the suspension of Japanese seafood imports by China, Reuters quoted the head of a seafood company in Hokkaido, Japan, which used to export scallops to China, as saying that the current situation is extremely frustrating. The Chinese seafood ban has had a very obvious impact on Japanese seafood exports. An expert on Japanese issues, after making estimates, told the Global Times that if you include the logistics, cold storage, and processing industries involved in transporting seafood, the impact on Japan's seafood industry is significant. The industry's annual losses could reach 110 billion yen. A Reuters report on November 21 pointed out that, according to United Nations Trade Commodity Statistics and related data, China is Japan's second largest export market. In 2024, China imported about $125 billion worth of goods from Japan, mainly covering categories such as industrial equipment, semiconductors, and automobiles. By comparison, South Korea, which is Japan's third largest export destination, only absorbed $46 billion worth of Japanese goods last year. The article believes that if China closes its market to Japanese products, Japan will find it difficult to find an alternative market. Han Haoyu, a specially appointed research fellow at the Asia-Pacific Research Institute of the China Institute of International Studies, believes that the tensions in China-Japan relations triggered by Sanai Takaichi's remarks on Taiwan are becoming a major external risk to Japan's recovery, and that China-Japan relations are deteriorating. This has previously weakened Chinese demand for Japanese products and services, affected exports and business operations in China, while also slowing down two-way investment and impacting bilateral trade, further exacerbating structural issues such as weak domestic demand in Japan's economy. Han Haoyu said that, in addition to the fisheries industry, Japan's export-oriented industries such as automobiles, semiconductors, and electronic machinery and equipment may also face risks in the future. The interconnected relationship between Japanese and Chinese businesses is reflected in many aspects, especially in the field of high-end manufacturing. According to publicly available media reports, in 2024, 44% of Tokyo Electron's revenue comes from China. Analysts believe that with such a large market share, if orders from China decrease, it will directly affect the revenue of Japanese companies, which in turn will have a chain reaction on domestic research and development investment and employment stability in Japan. In the home appliance sector, in 2024, China imported about $708 million worth of home appliances from Japan. A relevant executive from a well-known home appliance company, in a recent interview with the Global Times, repeatedly emphasized the importance of the Chinese market, stating that if Japanese companies lose the Chinese market, they will lose their competitiveness globally. As for the automotive industry, which is one of the pillars of the Japanese economy, its dependence on the Chinese market is even more pronounced. According to publicly available media reports, in the first half of 2025, Japan's automobile exports to China reached 83,000 units, accounting for 37% of China's total imports during the same period. In addition to exporting complete vehicles, Japanese car companies also hold an important position in automobile production within China. CNBC reported on the diplomatic dispute between Tokyo and Beijing. This threatens Japan's already fragile economy, which is also being hit by U.S. tariffs and a decline in real estate investment. Liu Zhongxiong, a researcher at the China Institute of Contemporary International Relations, said that trade and business cooperation between China and Japan, as well as Chinese investment in Japan's stock market and real estate, are crucial to Japan's economy. Although Japan has access to the US market, it has been affected by Trump's tariffs, which have already caused a slowdown in economic growth in the third quarter. If it loses the Chinese market as well, its economy will face even more severe challenges. In conclusion, scholars and experts from the mainland all believe that the economic interdependence between China and Japan is supported by the political climate, and there is no possibility of a so-called cold economic war. In addition, some foreign media asked the Ministry of Foreign Affairs about Chinese diplomats posting on social media regarding Japanese Prime Minister Sanai Takaichi's statements on Taiwan, such as Chinese officials sharing a series of cartoons and so on. Analysts believe this suggests that China is restarting its wolf warrior diplomacy, and they have expressed concern about this. Spokesperson Mao Ling said Japanese Prime Minister Sanai Takaichi has made erroneous remarks about Taiwan, implying possible military intervention in the Taiwan Strait, which undermines the political foundation of China-Japan relations and provokes strong indignation and condemnation from the Chinese people. China firmly opposes this. The international community should be more concerned about what Japan intends to do and whether it can still follow the path of peaceful development. As for wolf warrior diplomacy, does it mean China cannot defend itself? What about China's core interests? Sanai Takaichi said that Japan might intervene militarily in the Taiwan Strait, which for China constitutes a military threat. China's countermeasures are reasonable and justified. The Western response to China is overly speculative, while they downplay the actions of the real instigator, Japan.